Organizers for dedicating time to this very important topic. And so we're going to have a panel. We have some people that have volunteered to be on the panel, but I did kind of want to prelude it with some, preparation and facts. And really, one of the things that we see a lot of times, you say, okay, women in science, and the guys, they kind of like, I didn't do anything. and we talk about minorities, and the white people say, I'm not a racist, I have a black friend. So really, this is not what it's supposed to be about. And one of the things that's really kind of hurting this whole conversation about women and race, especially in a field like physics that is predominantly white male, is the guilt. Because even though I'm sure none of you have done anything wrong, things happen. And while some of the things might be blatantly obvious to the people that are minorities or women or in certain roles, they may not be obvious to you. So unless we can have a conversation, unless we can put that aside and say, well, I didn't realize, we're not going to make any progress. So you can put it aside. I'm sure you didn't do anything. And what we really should be saying, so as you know, in the program it said women in science. I really wanted to be women and minority in science. And really what the title should be is something like this. It should be really, what kind of science community do we want? Okay, how do we want to operate? I mean, maybe we want all physicists to be white middle-aged men. I don't know. Maybe that's what we want. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. What are the ups and downs? What are the benefits and the drawbacks for having that kind of society? So that's really what we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about, hey, it's wrong. Somebody told me it was wrong not to have minorities or not to have Hispanics in physics. What it really should be a conversation about what kind of science community do we want and why. Okay, so do we have a problem? Maybe we don't have a problem, so let's look at I put together a few numbers, some statistics, some historical facts, a little bit about physics culture. We all have anecdotal evidence, and that may be going all kinds of directions. That might be, the guy sitting next to me was a jerk. The guys in the lab don't let me do the experiment. They just have me write things down. It could be, the girl didn't know anything. So whatever your anecdotes are, they do exist. After all, we're scientists, and we go by the facts, right? And then we're going to have a little discussion. All right, so here's some facts that I've collected. And there's some references are in the bottom, and I'm willing to share these, but there are a lot of statistics out there that are collected by AARP and APS. Yes, we do have more women than men, and the older you get, the more women there are. So 65 plus, 57% of that population is female. 12.6%, so this is really just to put the statistics into perspective. 12.6% of the U.S. population is African American. We are in the United States of America, and we don't have one African American male in this, or female, in this room. At least I haven't seen one. If you are, raise your hand. No. We don't even have one. Okay. 16% are Hispanic. Now, 20% of the U.S. bachelor degrees are given out to women, but if you look further down, only 10% of those recipients are full professors So you can kind of see where the trajectory is going. So even though we are increasing the number of women in physics, it's not, the promotion is not quite keeping up. It's getting better, but it's not going at the same rate. So let's see. One very sad thing that I ran across is, since 1995, we've had anyway a low number of African Americans graduating with a bachelor degree in physics, and that number has gone down to half. So there's actually on the ARP website, you can actually type in your institution and it'll tell you how you compare to other departments in the country. That's probably useful more for the faculty here, or if as a female you want to consider a certain graduate school and you either want to be in the majority or the minority. I mean, in my department at Vassar College, we are more than 50% women, so it can be done. But when I was at West Point, I was one woman out of 30 faculty members, so that was a whole different dynamic. So let's see. Couldn't find any explicit stats for Hispanics and African Americans when it comes to physics faculty. We have 1.5 Hispanic in my department. We're 6.5 tenure track faculty members, so that is probably an unusually high number. I'm not sure because the statistics aren't out there, but I think if the number was higher, it would probably exist. So let's see. Only 4% of the physics faculty are made up by minorities. So that's also when you think about 12% of the population or 13% of the population is African American, 16% are Hispanic. So that's a really low number. So the question is, why is that? So, and I don't have the answer. I just have a few more facts to share. So, there's a study by Amy Bugg. Is anybody familiar with it? I know there's at least one woman in the room that's familiar with that. So I'm going to try to describe this study. It's actually very interesting. So Amy Bugg is a physics professor, very successful physics professor, and she said she just felt like she was working so hard, but she kept getting crappy teaching evaluations. So she got some funding to hire some actors, and she hired 4 actors, 2 men and 2 women. Now these were actors without any physics training. She wrote a script, and she videotaped these actors giving a physics lecture instructed by her. They were dressed in comparable ways. And then she had 100-some students that were evaluating this physics lecture. And some of the questions, and you can look this up on the web if you're interested in the details, but what happened was that clearly, and this is actually from both male and female students, clearly, the males were more competent. They knew more about equipment. They were more competent when it came to going through derivations. What was a little bit interesting was that some of the female students were saying that, oh, you know, the woman cared more about their learning. They said exactly the same words. They did exactly the same things. So why is that? So for somebody to say that they don't have these kind of biases, and I'm sure the students thought they were very objective. And that's exactly the point. So I would encourage you to go to this website at Harvard, and you can actually do a test to test your own implicit biases. And one of the things that is really apparent, there are lots of studies out about teaching evaluations and how women are evaluated versus men in general in the job market. So you take the exact same CV or resume, you put a woman's first name, let's say you put Jenny versus John, and then all of a sudden John is more qualified than Jenny. He deserves about a third more of the salary. So these studies are all out there. So these are some of the facts. Fact is also that, yes, we all want to believe that we're great people and we don't have biases. But the fact is also that we constantly get bombarded with all kinds of images and all kinds of things, I mean, as soon as we step out of this room. So it is worthwhile to kind of get to know yourself. So I would encourage you to just try to find out, what kind of biases you have, or don't completely discount it. Even my colleague at Vassar, Cindy Schwartz, and I, we have had these discussions that we go to physics conferences, and a lot of times when we see women there, we think, oh, she's somebody's wife. We just make that assumption, She's somebody's wife, somebody's girlfriend. And then turns out she's a fantastic physicist, and she's just here to give a talk, right? So even we have those biases. The other thing that I really would like to caution you about, and there are also a lot of studies about, is that this is a complicated issue. This is not something that we're going to fix today, tomorrow, in 10 years. It's an issue. I mean, you understand the issue of a complex system, right? I mean, it's the difference between a physicist and a biologist. I've been doing biophysics for almost 10 years, and so I have a little joke. I think I might have told it last year, so bear with me. So there's a physicist and a biologist, and they want to collaborate, right? And the physicist says, okay, tell me about the brain. And the biologist says, okay, so the brain has two halves. And the physicist says, stop, you told me too much already. So we would, it is in the nature of a physicist to oversimplify things, the spherical cow, all that kind of stuff. So it is not as easy as saying, I'm just not going to be biased anymore. Or, I'm going to make sure my colleagues are not biased. And we have these challenges too. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I swore up and down I wasn't going to buy her any anorexic Barbies. And by the time she was 3, she had about 50 of them. There's something bigger. There's a society. There is that influences the way we think, the way we behave. So you should think about that, and not just try to blame it on one single cause. And it's really a matter of culture rather than one single person causing a problem. Because think about it, if you have something happening that you don't like, it's also the bystanders that are a lot of times guilty of contributing to the problem if there is a problem, right? And sometimes there's not even anybody doing anything wrong because that's the culture, that's the way we behave. I did also want to mention to you that small disadvantages actually add up to big effects. I have spent some afternoons adding up funding in my field when I was still doing diatomic spectroscopy. How many women, how many men got funded? Only 2% of the funding went to female faculty. And NSF doesn't, I don't know if they keep track of these numbers, but women are way underfunded. And then we could have a discussion why that is, but that's a fact. Let's see. So now I want to get a little bit more into the realm of, should we even have diversity? Should we even bother? I mean, you all are sitting here, and I appreciate, I was envisioning this thing about people walking out the room and saying, oh, I don't want to talk about this. So I appreciate you staying. So just about all major organizations, maybe all of them, have diversity statements of some sort. Somehow the society has recognized that diversity is important, but the question is why. And this past year has convinced me that you can't change people's opinion with a logical argument, but I can give you some facts for the general population out there, or if you haven't made up your mind. There is lots of evidence that a diverse environment is a more productive environment, and I actually have a few citations. The other thing that I really, really wish we could get away from is the burden of proof lies with the women or the minorities. We don't have an African American person in this room to say, hey, I want to be in physics. Why don't you have me here? So I think it's really everyone's responsibility to say, okay, why do we want this? Do we want this? Should we do anything about it? So let's see. So let's look a little bit at the history. Okay, I did an engram. I love these engrams, right? People have always been talking about women a lot more than about physics. So that's number one. And as you can see, in the 60s, the conversation went through the roof. So that is actually a good thing. So there was a little blip in the 20s. I guess this was like around when Einstein was around, Oppenheimer, all these interesting people. But other than that, hey, if everybody else in the society talks about women, why not us? So what's the history? Why do we have so few women in the sciences? First of all, we've always had women scientists and women engineers. Especially in the Middle Ages, a lot of times we used to call them witches. I know, it seems funny, but I actually have a colleague in Vassar. She's in medieval studies, and she told me that most magic books were actually gynecological, I can't even say the word right. Anyway, they were medical books, right? Especially for women to take care of themselves and take care of each other. So I have this dream course, her and I, that we want to do. We want to do a medieval science class, and we're going to use this medieval magic books to teach it. Just a couple, doing science was, especially for women, was quite hazardous. A lot of women were scientists and just got burned at the stake. So, that kind of reduced the numbers, you have to admit. Catherine Kepler, yes, was Johannes Kepler's mother. And she actually was accused of witchery. He got her off. So that was a good thing. Then Agnes Sampson was actually, she was kind of like a medical doctor type of person that got accused of witchery and burned at the stake, so she didn't get off. So you can kind of look back at that, and when you think about, okay, it took men a long time to get science where it is, and I do think that women were a part of that, but they weren't always inclusive about it. And by the way, Catherine Kepler was accused of witchery by another woman, so we share the burden here. So there's a long list of scientists throughout the ages, female scientists, and a lot that suffered from that. A lot of women have gotten ignored in their contributions, and we have a few famous ones, but there's quite a list of other ones too. what I want you to be aware of, that even these days, the science societies like the American Physical Society, the Optical Society of America, does blatant sexist things. I mean, you know, so they were writing the APS News, this was in 2008, they wrote this little article about Amelia, and I can't pronounce the rest of her name very well, so I'm not going to try. But the first sentence in the article, instead of saying, was a fantastic mathematician, it says, was famous for being Voltaire's mistress. I mean, this is how they introduce a world-class mathematician of her time. Nobody introduces Ben Franklin as a womanizer and a whore, and, you know, because he was, you know. But I have never seen him introduced that way. And the man has a statue outside my building where I teach, and he made great contributions to science, but that's not how he's introduced in the history books. When was it? Probably a year and a half ago, OSA turned 100, and I was at the conference, and me and some of my female colleagues were absolutely mortified because the celebration had, our membership contributions went to women who were, okay, fantastic violinists, so that part I had no problem with, I thought that was fantastic. But they had extremely short skirts, and while they were playing the violin, every once in a while they were, you know, had these light up green dresses, you know, light up because it's the Optical Society of America, and it was just nauseating how they were objectifying these. This was only a year and a half ago, and of course when I wrote to OSA about it, there was no response, and I would not have had a problem if there was some men with the equivalent outfits, but they weren't there. They weren't serving me any little hors d'oeuvres with, you know, with little light up bow ties or something like that. You know? So it's happening. So just to be a little bit more aware, you know, maybe if they had some women on the panel or listened to them, it would have been a little bit more sensitive, that celebration to them. There are lots of women whose Rosalind Franklin, I still have a problem with that. Wikipedia just does not acknowledge the kind of contribution she's made. They have a little mentioning of her. Vera Rubin, there was a New York Times article recently that was mentioned, is said to have been kind of ignored in her contributions. So these are just kind of the things that goes on into the presence. I mean, I do appreciate not getting burned at the stake, I have to say. That one is nice. So I just have a couple more slides. So here's a little bit about the culture in physics. The culture in physics is different than, I mean, you have to admit, it's different than I guess every profession has their culture. So there are lots of publications out there. These are just a couple that I happen to run across that actually show that if you think about why do we want diversity, it makes you actually for a more productive society. I mean, do you really, I mean, when it comes to, let's say, okay, you discard half the population and say, okay, you can't do physics. Women are half the population or more. You're really throwing out a lot of brain power in a global competitive market. I mean, when you see what other countries are doing, the United States is kind of falling behind. Collaborative practice can increase productivity, and that is in the spirit of having a collaborative, inclusive kind of environment. So Günter Schuh thinks so. And then last but not least, what I thought was kind of, you know, telling and abusing is that employment and wage growth has been strongest in jobs that require high levels of both cognitive skill and social skill. Now, I know, academics are not getting paid a lot, and in physics we do have the cognitive skill covered, but the social skills, I think we have to work. And in that spirit, I just wanted to mention this slide, which I thought was interesting. So this is also by AARP. And this was, I'm not sure how AARP meant to put the information out there, but it had a self-assessment of levels of preparation. And in this statistics, all women self-assess them as less prepared to teach physics. Now, does that mean they're really less prepared, or does that mean that they are finally believing at this level that they're less prepared because that's what society tells them? So I thought that was kind of an interesting chart.
But men always overestimate themselves, don't they?
I'm sorry?
Men always overestimate themselves.
I'm glad you said that. All right, so I thought, as the panel is going to come up, we could do a little exercise. So I would like for you to get together with